The point is, DeKalb County has had about 11 superintendents in 20 years. So maybe a cat can live longer in DeKalb County. You think so? Hi, I am Verdaillia Turner, and this is Georgia Now. In April, and that was yesterday, April the 26th, the CEO of DeKalb County gave the interim superintendent, Dr. Tinsley, the highest award that a DeKalb County citizen can receive, and rightfully so. But unfortunately, Dr. Tinsley is going out of the door, and the question is why? Why has DeKalb County hired 11 superintendents since 2002? So I would like to just shed a little light on this. Let's talk about Dr. Tinsley for a minute. When things are going good and the district was stabilized after Dr. Tinsley came in, and this is post-COVID, some of the things that she did, employees received a $1,000 bonus around Valentine's Day, and that came out of the general budget. Teachers receive incentives for continuing their employment, and that's key if we're going to keep teachers in a time that we already know that everybody's scrambling for teachers. They signed those contracts early on. She had that kind of foresight. East Plus was passed. Additional funds went towards security enhancements and metal detectors in schools when she was getting flack about that. That's for security, and that's before those additional funds that President Biden is sending down. It has been delivered even to DeKalb County. Green school initiatives and modernization efforts are underway under her. A 12-month stabilization plan for the district was put in place, and it was being stabilized. The district was able to come off corrective action plans per the Department of Education for facilities. Remember when the district was in news about the facility in North Druid Hills? Well, that has been, it's out of the news now, right? So usually negative news make the news. So Dr. Tinsley was doing something right. Now, this is not a promotion for Dr. Tinsley, nor is this a slap at the new superintendent coming in, but this is a question about the Board of Education in terms of why we keep changing superintendents. After all, when superintendents are hired, there's a search committee. Georgia School Board Association or some consulting group are paid tens of thousands of dollars, money out of my pocket, money out of your pocket if you're living in DeKalb, in order to find a superintendent. I've been on some of those search team, so-called superintendent search committees. And we were told by one consultant, if you want to hire or have some input in hiring a superintendent, then you need to be on the board. Because from the information that I've received and been made privy to, people don't even make the top 10%. Some of these candidates are not making the top 10%. So what's the criteria for hiring a superintendent? After all, superintendents are CEOs. They set vision. They take care of crises. They stabilize the district, and that's very important. It's important to development. It's important to tax dollars. It's important to real estate. See, there's a business side to these school districts. We usually talk about children learning. Well, children are going to learn. We're humans. We're going to learn. We can set conditions so that those conditions are paramount or not, but children will learn. Humans will learn. So the problem happens to be with the money, with the business. And that's why so many people scramble to control school board members. So many people scramble to be part of school systems to get into the pot. And in DeKalb County, the pot is $2.9 billion. Let me repeat that. $2.9 billion. That's the budget of the school district. And that's not including all the federal money that comes down. So it might be more like $3.5 billion and up. Most citizens can't even read those budgets. Most school board members can't read those budgets. And school board members are coming on, we love the children. Yeah, all of us love the children. All of us love the children. All of us drink water too. At least I hope we do. But what's really people are looking at is the moolah. Follow the moolah. In DeKalb County, there's a lot of destabilization. There has been a move for the longest for folk to have their own cities. And so you can argue both sides of that. But what's really at stake, from my experience on that board, school board members have come on and they've been very disruptive in order for the public to fall out with the process because the public needs to be more engaged, and most parents are not. But when the public falls out with the process, they sit back and relax and go to sleep as others walk in, as they did in Atlanta, in the name of education, and take your schools. They either take those schools to companies, where companies run charter schools with little transparency, or schools are broken up into different cities, and those cities control those tax dollars. Well, Verdaillia, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is that the county then, and Dekalb County's budget is $1.9 billion. Notice the school district's budget is much larger, probably doubled if you look at all of the money. The services then are affected for people who are not into all of those little segregated cities. And usually you can't afford to move in them anyway. I mean, you really can't. It's a new form of segregation. And it could be racial, but usually it's economic. And just so happen to be people move in there, and you can't tell the difference because they might look like me, but they don't think necessarily like me. I won't get into that discussion. So why did we change horses in midstream? That's the million-dollar question. So we saw, where did superintendents come from anyway? We know what superintendents need to be. They need to be able to read budgets, guide the ship. They need to be able to look at particular schools and or personnel to know whether they have the right personnel in place to do the job. They need to have some foresight in terms of what is the future, where are we moving in the state and the country and the world economically. Where is the future education that we need for our children? We haven't even gotten into that, and what does that look like? So education leaders are different from those people who we are choosing many times now to handle these school districts. Or they are people who have been sought out, placed just for somebody's agenda. So if it's not about education, because this can't be about education because we got rid of Dr. Tinsley. And again, I'm not trying to promote her. And we're not talking about personality teachers and whether or not you like the superintendent, because usually teachers not going to like their bosses. I hate to say that. I'm a teacher too. But so why did we change? So if it's not about sound education, what is the agenda? That's the million-dollar question I want you to ask yourself. When we looked at Dr. Horton's record, and there are many stories that we have here that could be substantiated, superintendent finalist faces criticism and federal lawsuits. Superintendent finalist, a polarizing figure in his current district. That's just one. We're going to post all of these. Superintendent finalists didn't disclose their consulting work on economic interests. Hello. Hello. Why all student needs agency rather than equity? That's Can schools be anti-racist? A new superintendent in Evanston. We can go on and on. Look at this. Chicago workers owe city millions in unpaid debt. School district. Now, here's a problem. When I sat on superintendent search teams, they would tell us, these are consultants, well, we can't disclose who the names are, and some of the board members go along with this, because these applicants are already employed and they don't want their employer to know that they are trying to leave them. But you know, they dressed it up. Why not? How many of us, can you do this? Can you apply for a job and not explain why you don't want your present employer to know that you tried to tip out the back door or that you were fired? Teachers can't do it. So why are superintendents able to do it and to move around in these very lucrative positions where some say, I'm for the children and they're nothing more than mechanics? Especially with these kind of records. Now, this is not against Dr. Horton, but this is very plain here. Now, I don't care, I taught in large school districts too. But sometimes, large school districts don't qualify me just to be a superintendent just because I taught school. or, you know, people can say that. I understand that this superintendent has come from a very small school district, and Dekalb County is a large school district. Again, this is not against the superintendent. Y'all need to look at who that superintendent is and where he came from, because we really don't need to keep getting it wrong, y'all. Now, our state school superintendent, he's an educator, asked the school system to slow their roll. Now, he has no jurisdiction, but the district can't say it wasn't warned. I saw the interview from NAACP president. I know where some of the state senators stood in DeKalb. We voiced our opinion in DeKalb. But the school district, the school board members did exactly what they wanted to do. I recall them doing some of the same stuff before, although they have these required hearings for the public to come. Some of the public came because they were trying to court the superintendent for business. But they did what they wanted to do anyway, and they're going to do it. So then that begs another question. Who are these school board members? And are school board races important? You better believe they are. And they get very little attention, except in the case of Atlanta, where now hundreds of thousands of dollars were put in place to elect a board that handed over so many schools with multiple years contracts to private companies to run them. Some of those folk now at state. That's another story. Some of them are at City Hall. Most of them were trained by Teach for America, and this is not against Teach for America. We have some good people in Teach for America, but there's some stuff going on there that's deliberate, a system that's deliberately making and indoctrinating, financing people to become public officials, to make policy in their interests, special interests. So watch the school board races. In DeKalb County, those school board races are staggered. So there's an election coming up now. 3 people are up for election. After them, there'll be a few more up for election. You give the public 2 years, and they have forgotten what took place 2 years before, or just a year before. They won't connect the dots. But folk who are interested in breaking that county up, or interested in controlling that $2.9 billion plus, you better believe they're meeting when you and I are sleeping. Maybe that's what's behind so many superintendents. But, you know, I'm looking at, I'm going to hold this up, you know, this for you to see, and I think we're going to post it. I hope we get this right. So now we have Dr. Horton. Before Dr. Horton, I just named Dr. Tinsley. Then we had Cheryl Watson Harris, and I was always concerned as to how she got in the district, because a man named Rudy Crew was the one that had the contract. And Rudy Crew, of course, had fought a lot for some inequities, and that cost him his job perhaps up there in New York with Rudy Giuliani. Jerome Harris was in Atlanta. He fought for equities. And when you fight boards of educations that got other agendas, when superintendents try to speak up, then of course they're going to fire them. But that's why you need to know why they were fired, and that needs to be disclosed, or why they're trying to escape. Some of them are just trying to escape. But Cheryl Watson Harris was the person chosen over Rudy Crew. He sued DeKalb County and won almost $1 million. So that's costing me tax dollars, costing you tax dollars. I don't know if Cheryl Watson Harris is trying to sue or not. She's with Achieve now in Atlanta. Somebody can ask her. You know, it's strange, and I'm not trying to make an enemy here, how people can call us and talk to us, but when they land to their next soft spot, all of a sudden they get quiet. Okay. Well, we are asking DeKalb County right now for open records request. We're putting in as of today for all of the suits that they've had to settle, or suits that are pending. That board, you'd be surprised, the Gold case, look it up, that dealt with retirement money. I mean, just costing us all kind of money, boards. Before Cheryl Watson Harris, there was Ramona Tyson. She was interim, and they didn't retain her. I think she applied. I'm not sure. You can ask her. But then Stephen Green came out of nowhere. and I remember being on that superintendent search team, and one of the people on the board when we had concerns, because Michael Thurman, which is now the CEO, told us he would stay because he did serve as superintendent. I got a call with Ms. Turner, you know what, we got somebody, and then you're going to be proud of them. Well, we weren't proud. They didn't make us proud. Make me mirror and I'll make you proud. So we can go on and on, but let's go back to before Jim Cherry. Jim Cherry had about 25 years in DeKalb County. He has a rich history of trying to bring equity and equality into DeKalb County to make sure especially black children were served, because back then black families used coal, C-O-A-L. Huh? Most families use coal to heat their houses. Do I sound like I'm 100 years old? But they were hiring people to make sure that these kids had the basics in order to get to schools. We can go through that history a little later on. We're going to do that. But Jim Cherry was appointed by the state when DeKalb was having problems way back then, because the state was trying to make sure that the children were served properly in DeKalb County and the citizens. So it's nothing that's out of the ordinary for a state school superintendent, Mr. State School Superintendent, and thank you for doing that, to write a letter to ask the Board of Education to look again. So DeKalb, you've been warned. I hope we have it right. I got a lot of doubts right now, but you know, I don't know those 6 numbers. Not that I gamble on Fridays, but I can't say we have it right or wrong. But right now, I don't think that we have it. I don't think that we have it right. So we went back. We had Jim Cherry from 1947 and 1972, but before him, there was a man named Mr. Henry. So we don't want to go back that far. Then Mr. Jim Henson from 1972 to 1979, and Robert Freeman from 1980 to 1996. Now, James Holliford, 1996 to 2002. And the first African-American superintendent that came into DeKalb County was Johnny Brown. And Johnny Brown was from 2002 to 2004, Mr. Johnny Brown. And I don't want to leave out Miss Narvie Harris. She was not a superintendent, but at the time that the superintendents prior to her, which were white, was serving in DeKalb County and had a hold of everything, they did bring in a Narvie Harris, who was very sensitive to bringing in African Americans into the school district. That's another story, but I want to commend DeKalb for that. We have a school named for Narvie Harris also. But Michael Thurman served us from 13 to 16. Remember all those millions of dollars that he found for us in the budget? That budget is now $2.9 billion. I'm being redundant, maybe. We had Cheryl Atkinson from 2011 to 2013. Ramona Tyson, again, from 2010 to 2011. And then that was that Crawford Lewis. Crawford Lewis, Dr. Lewis died not too long ago. You know, he was 2004, 2010, but maybe I'm digressing, going back and forth, but I'm looking at this sheet, and y'all can look at it for yourself to see who was serving during our lifetimes. I think we're going to post this. Stephen Green, 2016 to 19, Ramona Tyson, 2019 to 20, Cheryl Watkins Harris, 22, then Dr. Tinsley, 23, well, and then now to Dr. Horton, but the point is, DeKalb County has had about 11 superintendents in 20 years. So maybe a cat could live longer in DeKalb County. You think so? There is no rhyme or reason to this. There is some other agenda that's up. I don't know all of the what the agendas might be. Dr. Morley spoke her piece. I think some of the state senators and representatives may have spoken to the board, the delegation. We saw the state school superintendent say something. NAACP said something. It didn't make a difference. So if Dr. Horton was the best candidate out of the lot, and this is not to put down Dr. Horton, if he was the best candidate decided by this board, public, we need to rethink that board. Think about it. And we can talk about how to get elected and how to take folk out. That's the democratic process. Thank you so much.